"You came to the wrong house," my father said, staring straight through me as if I were a stranger peddling lies. His voice was flat, cold, familiar, and that's how it began. The conversation that shattered everything I believed about blood, love, and legacy. It was a warm April afternoon in Atlanta, Georgia. I had flown in from New York, heart pounding in my throat, invitation clutched in my hand like a confession. After 20 years of silence, I was standing at the gates of the man who helped bring me into this world, but never once tried to keep me in it. He stood in the doorway in his tailored suit, wedding ring still gleaming, smelling of wood polish and privilege. His house towered behind him like a fortress built to keep out truth. "Daddy," I whispered, but the words stung my throat. He blinked. Once. Twice. And then looked at my hand. "You shouldn't be here, Savannah." I wanted to laugh. Or scream. Or collapse. But I just stood there, like I always had, waiting for him to see me. Waiting for his heart to open, the way he once promised it would. "You told Mama you'd come back," I said. "You told her your heart was open, remember that?" His jaw tightened. "And then you left us in that motel for 6 months with no heat, no food, no answers." His wife appeared behind him, shocked, perfectly blonde, draped in pearls and disbelief. She whispered, "Who is this?" He didn't answer. He just stepped forward and quietly closed the door between us. "You want to know pain? It's not loud. It doesn't scream like they show in the movies. It whispers. It sits with you in taxi rides, on cracked sidewalks, in airport bathrooms as you cry silently into a paper towel. It follows you. My name is Savannah Cole. I was the daughter my father never claimed. And I was about to claim something more dangerous than his love. The truth. When I was 9, my mom told me something I've never forgotten. Your father has a shiny heart, baby. But shiny things? They reflect only what they want to. I didn't understand it back then. But I do now. I grew up on food stamps and half-promises. My mom, Deborah Cole, worked nights at a diner and slept in the afternoon while I did homework on her chest. There was never enough money, but there was always one rule. Don't ask about your father. Until the day she broke it. It was Christmas Eve. I was 12. She was drunk, more drunk than usual, and crying into a broken wine glass. She looked at me and said, "Your father's heart was open until I told him you were born with his eyes." He couldn't handle the mirror. That night, she gave me a name. Matthew Langston, CEO of Langston Investments. Married, wealthy, respected, and a coward. I spent the next 2 decades watching my own father on TV. He gave speeches about second chances. He donated to fatherless youth. He shook hands with mayors and built schools. He was everyone's father, except mine. And now, at 33, I had walked up to his house with a simple intention. Not for love, not for forgiveness, but for answers. You see, my mother passed away 6 months ago. Liver failure. In her final letter, she said, he said his heart was open. Go see for yourself. Just don't expect warmth. And God, she was right. When I stood at that door, he didn't even flinch. Not a tremor. Not a whisper of recognition. Like I was a sin he thought he'd buried with time. But what he didn't know. I brought a shovel. After he closed the door, I stood there for another 10 minutes. Not crying. Not begging. Just burning. That kind of silence, that kind of rejection, it doesn't kill you. It resurrects something darker. So, I turned, walked away, and made a call. Detective Owens? I'm ready. That's when everything shifted. Let me backtrack. 4 years ago, a private investigator approached me. He said he'd been following my father's charity transactions. Something didn't add up. Turns out Langston Investments wasn't just about stocks. It was built on family betrayal, hidden children, and the silencing of women like my mother. There were others. 3 other women. 3 other children. All left behind in different states, given the same empty promise. My heart is open. That phrase? It was his weapon. He opened his heart like a trapdoor. And every woman who fell in? He locked it behind them.
But now?
I had his words. I had his DNA. I had the truth. And I was done knocking on closed doors. That's when I made a vow. He said his heart was open. I'd split it wide enough for the world to see what was rotting inside. They say revenge is a dish best served cold.
But mine?
Mine would be televised. So, I booked a room at the Grand Hyatt. Sent invitations to all his investors, his board members, his friends. Savannah Cole, the daughter Matthew Langston pretends doesn't exist. But this wasn't about making a scene. It was about making him look in the mirror. For once. Because what my mother saw in him wasn't just a lie. It was a legacy of ghosts. And I planned to introduce every one of them. I'm Savannah Cole, 33 years old, daughter of a ghost. And the storm he buried is back. Are you sure you want to go through with this? Detective Owens asked, standing beneath the flickering hallway light of the Grand Hyatt. His eyes weren't just tired, they were heavy. Like he'd seen too many daughters fight ghosts that looked like their fathers. I'm not just sure, I whispered. I'm done surviving quietly. 2 days after my father shut the door in my face, I found myself seated in a conference room lined with gold curtains and silence. On the table, a folder thick with names, bank records, letters, and the kind of receipts that make men choke on their reputations. Langston Investments wasn't just a company. It was a graveyard. And I was holding the shovel and the flashlight. Tell me everything, I said. Detective Owens opened the file slowly, as if the truth had to be let out gently, or it'd bite someone. 3 women. 3 paternity matches. All born within the same 6-year window. Same pattern. He nodded. He promises help. Says he's struggling with divorce. Says they're special. Promises the heart, but leaves them with nothing. No contact. No support. Just silence. I swallowed the bile in my throat. And the board. Completely unaware. At least officially. And his wife. He hesitated. That's where things get messy. Flashback. I remember watching her, standing behind him when I arrived at the house. Her pearl necklace like a chain, her eyes wide with something between confusion and denial. She didn't know me, but something in her posture told me. She suspected. Wives always do. Owen slid a photo across the table. A smiling woman in front of a foundation banner that read, Fathers of the Future. Oh, the irony. Her name's Vanessa Langston. Ex-banker. Clean image. Been married to Matthew for 25 years. But we've found transfer records, 7 figures, to offshore accounts connected to private silence agreements. He paid them off, and tried to pay off the past. But what he didn't know was that one of those women, my mother, never cashed the check. She kept it hidden in the back of a worn Bible, with a note. This is what he thinks we're worth. Don't ever believe it. You know what betrayal does? It doesn't just cut. It teaches you how to bleed beautifully, how to smile at people who look like your pain, how to sit across from lawyers and eat grief with a fork. That night I met the others. 3 daughters. 3 timelines. Same man. Brielle, 30. Asia, 29. Danica, 34. Different cities. Same look in the eyes, like broken girls who rebuilt themselves with secrets. We sat in a circle in the hotel lounge like it was therapy. But it wasn't. It was war planning. Danica spoke first. Her voice was sharp, like glass. He told my mom he was separated, that he was building a future for us. But when I was 5, we were evicted. She wrote to him, begged for help. He sent back a check and a gag order. She sipped her drink. She signed it. We never spoke of him again. Asia laughed bitterly. My mom refused to sign. So we got the opposite, lawyers.
Threats.
He told her no one would believe her. That she was a mistake. Brielle? She didn't speak for a while. Then finally, I watched him walk past me in a grocery store once. I was 17. I knew it was him. I smiled. He didn't blink. He just picked up organic eggs like I wasn't standing there choking on history. I didn't cry. Not because I was strong, but because we'd all cried enough tears to drown. I leaned forward. What if we didn't stay silent? You mean go public? Danica asked. I nodded. He built his empire on the image of family, of fatherhood. He used our pain to feed his platform. What if we flipped the script? Brielle looked at me. You want revenge? I smiled. I want truth. Loud enough to haunt. The next morning, I made the call. To a podcast host known for blowing up secrets, Tasha Monroe of American Scars. She answered with a skeptical voice. You got something that'll make people stop scrolling? I sent her the folder. Within hours, she responded, Savannah, this isn't just a story. This is generational arson. I want you in studio Monday. But word travels fast in rich circles. That afternoon, I got a text from an unknown number. You think you're ready to destroy me? I suggest you stop. Or someone else will stop you first. I didn't flinch. Because fear has a funny way of losing its grip when you've been abandoned for most of your life. I responded with one line. Your heart was never open. But your lies are about to be. 3 hours later, I got a knock at my hotel door. I opened it to find Vanessa Langston. In person. Alone. She stepped in, shaking slightly, but eyes locked to mine. I need you to listen. To what? Another lie? To the part of the story you don't know. And then she said something I'll never forget. I'm not here to defend him. I'm here to bury him, too. Turns out, Vanessa had secrets of her own. She knew, all along. But she wasn't just protecting him. She was protecting something darker. There were more. More women. More money. And something buried deeper than all of us. A will.
Signed.
Edited.
Hidden.
And guess whose name it once had on it?
Mine.
He wrote you in, she said, eyes glistening. Then he wrote you out. After your mother refused to disappear. I couldn't breathe. He not only locked me out of his life. He erased me from his future. But here's the thing about ghosts. They always find a way back home. And I was done asking for a key. I came to burn the door down. There's a certain silence that fills a boardroom right before the truth walks in. Not the kind you hear on Wall Street earnings calls. Not the awkward hush of men in suits trying to hide bad news. This silence? It's the sound of legacy holding its breath. The morning I walked into Langston Investments, the receptionist looked up, smiled politely, and asked if I had an appointment. I didn't answer. I just slipped her a sealed envelope. She opened it.
Read.
And paled.
Oh.
1 moment, please. 3 minutes later, the elevator opened for me without a button press. I took that steel ride up 32 floors, standing alone with the weight of generations strapped to my spine. The folder clutched in my hand didn't just contain secrets. It contained a reckoning. Inside the boardroom, 12 men, 2 women, a long mahogany table, polished water glasses, polished egos, polished lies, and then him, Matthew Langston, still in his signature navy suit, still hiding behind posture and performance. He didn't look shocked to see me, just tired, like a man who knew his time was running out, but still hoped the clock was broken. I walked to the center of the room, heels echoing like a metronome for Judgment Day. You have 5 minutes, one of the board members said. His voice was clipped, Wall Street sharp, dismissive. I smiled. 5 minutes is all I need to break a 2-decade lie. I placed 4 identical envelopes on the table, each labeled in gold ink. Legacy.
Lies.
Lineage.
Loss.
Open them. They hesitated. Matthew sat frozen, lips pressed tight.
But they opened them.
One by one. The first envelope, Legacy, revealed newspaper clippings, press interviews, video transcriptions of my father speaking on stages about the importance of fatherhood, restoring the Black family, honoring every child. The second envelope, Lies, contained DNA results. 4 paternity tests. 4 daughters, including me. The third envelope, Lineage, was a copy of the original Langston Family Trust, signed in 1995, with my name handwritten as a secondary heir. It had been scratched out in the 2001 amendment. No legal explanation. No documentation. Just redacted like I never existed. The final envelope, Loss, was my mother's letter. Written before she died. Dated. Detailed. Unforgiving. Gentlemen, I began, voice steady. You've built your wealth on the back of a man who stands for the family in public and destroys it in private. You trusted him with your investments, your reputations, your foundation. But let me show you what else he built. I stepped aside and hit the remote. A projector flickered on and played the footage. Danica's confession about eviction. Asia breaking down about her mother being threatened. Brielle showing the restraining order she'd filed after trying to speak to him in public. Me reading my mother's final note. And then Vanessa Langston's own video, saying, I kept his secrets because I believed in the image. But truth is, I was married to a man who bred shame and buried daughters. The room cracked. Not loudly,
but subtly.
Like trust collapsing inward. Matthew's face was stone. But stone cracks under pressure. You think this little show will undo what I've built? He finally muttered. I turned toward him slowly. You didn't build this, Matthew. You stole it. You stole our stories. You traded your children for press coverage. You wore fatherhood like a costume and silenced every voice that didn't fit your script. And now, I leaned forward. Now the world is watching. You see what the board didn't know. I hadn't just sent those envelopes to them. I sent copies to the Atlanta Tribune, the New York Times, a dozen nonprofit watchdogs, and the IRS. Because when a man lies about people, it's shameful. But when he lies about money, that's treason in corporate America. One board member stood. Mr. Langston, is any of this true? Matthew didn't answer. Another rose. Is the will real? Silence. Matthew, did you amend it to remove your daughter? Still nothing. That silence was louder than any confession. Finally, the chair of the board, a tall, weathered man named Douglas Crane, turned to me. Miss Cole, what exactly do you want? Not money, I said. I want the truth to cost him something. Just once. You want his resignation? No, I said, pausing. I want the world to see him resign from himself. Then I turned to my father. You once told the world your heart was open. Well, let's open it. The press conference happened 2 days later. He tried to spin it. Claimed he was manipulated. Claimed he didn't know for sure. Claimed those women were complicated. But truth doesn't stutter. And the daughters? We stood behind him, 4 strong women. 4 walking facts.
We didn't yell. We didn't beg.
We simply existed, loud enough to ruin his narrative. And then came the fallout. Langston investments plummeted. Sponsors dropped out. The foundation for fatherhood reform was dissolved. And Matthew Langston resigned. Officially, for personal health reasons. Unofficially, because truth doesn't need permission to destroy a lie. In the weeks that followed, Vanessa filed for divorce. Danica launched a nonprofit for children of public figure abandonment. Asia got her mother into trauma therapy. Brielle started writing a memoir. And me, I bought a house. One with big open windows. And a door that never locked behind me. But I wasn't done yet. Because there was one more secret in my mother's letter. A journal entry from 1994. Where she wrote, he told me he loved me. Then he looked at the baby and said, I'll love her if no one knows. That sentence? Burned into my bones. Some people are invited to funerals. Others crash them like vengeance in heels. When the email came, it wasn't addressed to me. No, dear Savannah. No acknowledgement of DNA or disgrace. Just a sleek black EV titled, Celebrating the Life and Legacy of Matthew J. Langston. Legacy? That word should have choked in their throats. I wore black, but not for grief. I wore it like armor, sharp shoulders, clean lines, no tears. Brielle had begged me not to go. Asia said it was too soon. Danica? She said what I already knew. You're not going to mourn him. You're going to remind them. The Langston Memorial Chapel stood like a cathedral of denial in Buckhead, glass panels, marble floors, white roses lined like a parade of innocence. The moment I stepped in, heads turned. Whispers bloomed like fungus across the aisle. She wasn't listed. Is that? She shouldn't be here. She's the one from the video. That's his daughter. Correction. I was his mirror. The one he cracked, then tried to bury. Vanessa was seated in the front row, eyes locked on the casket, like it owed her something. Maybe it did. She didn't look surprised to see me. She didn't look angry either. She looked free. For the first time, we both were. They let the speeches flow. One by one, people took the stage and painted him in gold. A business titan. A man of vision. A father to many. Many? I bit my cheek until I tasted blood. Then the pastor invited anyone who knew Mr. Langston intimately to speak. There was a pause. A shift.
And I stood.
The murmurs turned into audible gasps. But no one stopped me. Because what do you do when truth rises from the back row? You listen, even if it burns. I took the podium, cleared my throat, looked into a sea of tight lips and wide eyes, and said, I wasn't supposed to be here. Not just at this funeral, but in this man's life. Gasps again. Someone dropped their program. Vanessa closed her eyes. I'm Savannah Cole.
His daughter.
The one he never wanted you to know about. Some stood. Some sat frozen. But no one moved to stop me. Because truth needs no permission. I'm not here to curse the dead. I'm here to hold a mirror up to the living. He said his heart was open, but I was never invited in. Not for birthdays. Not for Christmas. Not even when my mother died holding a photo of him, she refused to burn. Every memory I have of this man is from television. Or tax documents. Or legal threats telling us to go quietly. But I didn't. I came loud. I reached into my coat pocket and pulled out the folded sheet. My mother's last letter. Her handwriting, shaky, broken, stubborn. Let me read you something. Savannah, if you ever find the courage to face your father, don't do it for love. Do it for truth. Do it for every child silenced by men who hide behind respectability and abandon their own blood. And do it knowing he may never give you a key, but you're the door. The room was dead silent. Not a cough, not a breath. Just me, a casket, and a lifetime of silence finally bleeding out. You don't get to wear a crown built on unacknowledged children and call it legacy. You don't get to die in peace when you left pieces of us scattered in motels and food bank lines. I am not your dirty secret. I am not a mistake. I am your echo, and I will keep echoing until every lie you told folds under its own shame. And then I turned to the casket and whispered so only I could hear. You closed your heart to me, so I opened the world to the truth. As I stepped down, no one clapped.
They didn't need to.
The silence was the applause. The shame, their inheritance. I walked out before the service ended. Before the fake tears spilled. Before they sanitized him into sainthood. Outside, a small girl, maybe 7, stood holding her mother's hand. She looked up at me and asked, Are you the one who made the video? I knelt down, nodding. Was he really your daddy? I looked her dead in the eye and said,
He was.
But he didn't know how to be one. She reached into her pocket and handed me a folded paper rose. You can have this. You looked sad but strong. My throat closed. I took it. Because somehow, that little girl gave me more than my father ever did. A moment of recognition. The story made headlines again that week. Illegitimate daughter delivers eulogy that shakes Atlanta's elite. Langston's legacy or Langston's lies? The daughter, who wouldn't stay silent. But I didn't care about the headlines anymore. This wasn't about headlines. This was about closure. About making sure the next little girl with questions doesn't get silence in return. Danica called me that night. You good? I smiled. Stared at the paper rose on my desk. Better than I've ever been. The next morning I got a package. No name. No return address. Inside, an old leather journal. Pages yellowed. Corners curled. A note tucked in. For Savannah, I found this in Matthew's safe. He never had the courage to give it to you. But I do.
V.
I opened to the first page. It read, I don't know how to be a father, but I've been haunted by her eyes since the day she was born. I didn't cry. I didn't smile. I just turned the page. Because that's what you do when life tries to lock you out. You find the door. You open it yourself. And you walk through uninvited. 6 months. That's how long it's been since I stood over my father's coffin and spoke the truth he ran from his whole life. 6 months since I cracked open the vault of silence, shame, and generational betrayal. 6 months since the man who claimed his heart was open was buried beneath the weight of everything he tried to hide. But this story isn't about his death. It never was. This story is about my resurrection. The journal Vanessa sent me changed everything. Inside it were fragments, some raw, some cowardly, some almost human.
He had written about me.
Scribbled on napkins, receipts, torn pages. Sometimes in anger. Sometimes in regret. Always in fear. She has her mother's stubbornness. And my guilt. God help her. What kind of man fears the child he made? I look in the mirror and see the daughter I denied. She doesn't haunt me. I haunt myself. At first, I read with clenched fists, then with trembling hands, then with something I hadn't felt in a long time. Not forgiveness, not love, but understanding. He was broken long before he broke me. That doesn't excuse him, but it explained what silence never did. I began to write. Not revenge pieces. Restoration. I called the project Open Hearts, a non-profit organization that supports children abandoned by parents of power and prominence. The ones who grow up in the shadows of men too cowardly to claim their blood. Danica joined as co-director. Asia now leads our legal advocacy division.
Brielle?
She's publishing her memoir next spring, Daughter Undenied. We were once secrets. Now we're a movement. As for Vanessa, she sold the Langston estate, divorced quietly, moved to Montana, opened a small bookstore. She named it Second Page. She sends me letters every month, sometimes photos of the countryside, sometimes old stories she finds between dusty covers. The last one said, "Thank you for letting the silence die with him. You gave us all a beginning." The media faded eventually. The headlines moved on, but the healing? That never stops. I live in Brooklyn now. 3rd floor apartment.
Quiet. Cozy.
Safe. I painted the front door blue. Open sky blue, because for once in my life, I didn't feel locked out. And yet, one night not long ago I had a dream. I was standing outside that same house in Atlanta, knocking, pleading, begging for something that wouldn't come. Only this time, I wasn't crying. I was calm, because I knew I didn't need that door anymore. I was the door. I had become everything I was denied. Sometimes I get letters from girls across the country. One came last week. "Hi, Miss Savannah. My name is Chloe. I'm 14. I don't know my dad, but I saw your video. And now I don't feel like a mistake anymore. I feel like a story that's still being written." I sat with that letter for hours. Because when people talk about legacies, they think of money, buildings, foundations. But my legacy? It's in every child who finally feels seen. Every daughter who stops apologizing for being born. Every story that refuses to stay buried beneath shame. I've stopped hating my father. Not because he deserves peace, but because I do. Hate was a lock I didn't realize I was still turning. Letting it go didn't excuse him. It freed me. I walked into a bookstore the other day. A young girl was crying quietly in the corner. Her father was yelling into a phone nearby, ignoring her completely. I sat beside her and offered a tissue. She looked up at me with swollen eyes. "Is he ever going to love me?" she asked. My heart cracked. And then I smiled. "You're already lovable. His blindness doesn't make you invisible." She stared at me, and in that moment I saw myself. All versions of me. The child. The silence. The fire. The woman. I was always waiting for someone to open the door. But I realize now, I was the one holding the key. To the little girls still knocking. You are not the echo of someone else's shame. You are not defined by the people who left. You are not unworthy because someone was too broken to love you. You are the doorway. And your story opens worlds. The final page of my father's journal read, "If she ever reads this, Tell her I was scared. Tell her she deserved more than I gave.
Tell her,
I see her now. I don't know if that was enough, but I closed that book gently, lit a candle, and said, I forgive you, but I'll never forget me again. Because I'm Savannah Cole, the daughter you locked out, the woman who let herself in, and the legacy that walked out holding the truth like a torch.